Hi, everyone. I'm Collin. This is my MES thesis on the behavioral ecology of the Tabasco mud turtle. Starting with my research question, I was interested in looking at how the movement of the Tabasco mud turtle is affected by precipitation in a seasonally dry tropical rainforest in Belize. A quick roadmap for the talk. I'll go over some biology and taxonomy of turtles, talk about my research site, go over my methodology, discuss some of my results, and talk about my conclusions and interpretations. So starting out, the Tabasco mud turtle is a member of the family Chinosternidae, which is commonly known as the mud and musk turtle family. They range from very small to pretty small. The biggest ones are about 1/3 of a meter long. Does my cursor show up? Yeah. This guy here is the giant Mexican musk turtle, which is the largest member of the family. They're about 1/3 of a meter long. Some of the distinguishing characteristics of this family are they're really robust jaw muscles. They're known for their really good bite strengths. They're adapted for biting through the calcareous shells of snails and other invertebrates. And the giant Mexican musk turtle actually is adapted for biting through the shells of other turtles. So it's considered a very poor move to get bit by one of these guys out in the field. The musk turtle name in the family comes from the distinctive smell that these animals produce from glands at their posteriors. Research is inconclusive about what that's exactly for, but it's really stinky when you catch a bunch of them. It's very aromatic. Some of the, coolest behavioral adaptations that this family exhibits are their ability to estivate and hibernate, estivation being their ability to withstand through torpor, extremes in heat and dryness and hibernation, same but with cold. I'm coining the term here, the all-American turtle family, because they're native to the Americas. They range from North America, not too high in latitudes, North America down to Central America, and then into South America. There's 4 genera across the 2 continents, each of which has a few species, except for one, which only has 1 species. So yeah, the focus of this thesis is on the Tabasco mud turtle. They're among the smallest turtles in the world at adulthood. The big ones that I was working with were about 80 millimeters long. This one here in the picture is like a mid-sized adult. Their range extends from eastern Mexico into Guatemala and Belize. They're considered near threatened due to habitat loss and local consumption. Recently, there have been laws passed in Mexico banning the sale of them commercially, but that hasn't done that much to stem the tide of their illegal capture and sale. They're omnivorous and considered partially aquatic. I have personally observed them eating invertebrates in water, so not plants, but that checks out. The literature on their life history is pretty thin. There's only 2 papers published that focus specifically on their natural history and behavior. So if I succeed in publishing this as a paper, this will be the 3rd. So the study site where I worked is on the grounds of the Belize Foundation for Research and Environmental Education. It's around an 1,100-acre private nature reserve in south central Belize. It borders the Maya Mountains Conservation Complex, which is made up of a number of national parks and reserves that outside of the Amazon is the biggest rainforest, continuous rainforest in the Western Hemisphere. It undergoes seasonal fluctuations in rainfall that are pretty dramatic from the dry season to the wet season. I conducted this study on the cusp of the rainy season last summer in July to capture variance between the turtle's movement in the dry season versus the wet season. And this project, I kind of piggybacked on a project I was already working on, which is a 10-year population survey of this study site, looking at all the species present. So this was kind of going on at the same time. So moving on to field methods for how I got these turtles. A lot of freshwater turtle species can be captured by setting traps in water. That didn't work for these guys, which was unfortunate. It was hard to find them. We caught I think we caught 2 in traps, but the rest all had to be captured by getting down on your hands and knees in the mud and kind of crawling through and either hoping you just bump into them or you can spot them. Some people were really good at spotting them, some people weren't. It was really important to find big enough individuals. The transmitters that I affixed to them were the smallest you could get, but they still were pretty heavy for an animal this small. So we had to get only the largest adults could have transmitters attached to them. So I had to reject a lot of individuals just because of size. Didn't want their movements being, affected negatively by those transmitters, the weight of them. Anecdotally, these animals are more active at night and also during rainfall. Neither of these things have been tested. But the conventional wisdom we started with was that they'd probably be out at night, which we didn't really want to go survey on account of it being the backcountry in the rainforest and lots of dangerous critters around. But they did seem to show up after rainfall. We didn't go out in the rain that much to find them, but they showed up in puddles afterwards. So after each animal was captured, we brought them back to a central processing location. I guess, in accordance with the rest of the survey going on, every animal was captured and biometrics were taken on all of them. If they're big enough, they had a pit tag put in. My Tabasco mud turtles had these transmitters affixed to them, which was kind of a delicate dance. Like I said, we had to weigh the weight of these transmitters along with this epoxy that we had to use to affix to the carapace. And we were in the backcountry for 3 weeks. We couldn't get more epoxy, so experimenting wasn't really an option. We were worried about the white color of the epoxy showing up in the rainforest, as that white color doesn't really show up with anything else. But we weren't willing to experiment with our small amount of it and dye it. But it ended up kind of solving itself. Here, they're called mud turtles for a reason. They went and crawled right through a bunch of mud, and not all of them were that well disguised, but that was really great to see that. So yeah, after affixing transmitters, we released each of the turtles back at their original capture point, and then left them alone for that day, and then came back every day for the next, ended up being 14 days, but we missed 2 days due to illness and like pretty crazy thunderstorms. Going out and finding these things was difficult. We had a lot of biotic and abiotic difficulties. The weather was, from a temperate Washington person, pretty hot, and I was very sweaty. We had a lot of lightning storms that were kind of dangerous. There were tons of animals to dodge, lots of like fire ants to bite us, these really fun parasitic flies called bot flies. We got stalked by a jaguar, which is pretty cool. Lots of venomous snakes all over the place. So it was like, we had to really be careful. Every time we'd go out in the field, we'd return to the last known location of each individual, take out the radio unit, and then go find it to within a meter. If the animals were buried in substrate, we didn't disturb them. We'd like triangulate their position and make sure that we were within about a meter of where the animal was. And down here is a picture of me in the rainforest off the trail. I am actually in there, but yeah, it's a lot of crawling around through a bunch of dense brush. So the results section, I looked at their microhabitat use. I just wanted to kind of see where they were. It's not really documented in the literature, where they live, where they go. So I identified a number of different categories: leaf litter, in and under woody debris, in water, associated with the cahoon palm, and underneath trees. You can see some of those represented. I included this cahoon palm because it's the dominant palm species in the area, and the seeds of this tree look a lot like the adult Tabasco mud turtle in the water. On the left are the seeds, on the right is the turtle. We captured a lot of seeds trying to find these turtles. We're like, oh, there's one, get it. And then it was a seed. So I wanted to see if there's some association. I didn't find one, but it was kind of interesting to check that out. So I ran a chi-squared analysis of the relative frequency of habitat use. I have to get rid of this word selection, but it's not good. I did not find significant difference in their habitat selection from each other. Some of the interesting surprises though, well, get to that in a second. They preferred leaf litter and hanging out at the base of trees the most. I mentioned earlier that they're considered a semi-aquatic species. Only 8 of my 100 or so observations were actually made in water, which was pretty surprising. Again, there's not a lot in literature to actually say that they do hang out in the water the most, but these results do not support that, which is pretty interesting. Some of them, I didn't test this in a statistical manner, but some of them had like little houses that they went back to. There were a couple of individuals that had the same, like really difficult to get to little piles of sticks that they kept going back to, which was kind of cool. So I like to say they have little houses. Yeah, and then just looking at just some basic stats on their movement, I got some means and standard deviations. I found out max straight line movement is like how far they'd go between each observation. For males, that was 205 meters, females was 103. And then the total distance between any 2 points was 275 for males, 151 meters for females. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're only 80 millimeters long, that is a pretty good distance. I hope in the future to run like a home range analysis, comparing this to another species in Mexico. The Mexican musk turtle, they have a range of 2.75 hectares. So seeing how this compares to them would be valuable. I made a cool little map of their movement. I made an animation in GIS that I couldn't get to work in the PowerPoint, but in an ideal world, you could see me bop around and draw a little line between all these little spots. One interesting thing, these gray and orange dots were the first 2 individuals captured. They were captured together and they stayed close together. One was a male and one was a female. So I like to imagine that they're special friends. So I guess the meat of my analysis was on looking at precipitation and movement. I got the most data on 6 individuals. 5 of them, I didn't find any strong relationships between precipitation and movement, but for one I did. I got a really deliciously tiny p-value down here, which was great. So for that one individual, I was able to reject the null hypothesis of no relationship between precipitation and movement, which was very exciting. My sample size was pretty small though, so there's more research needed to establish this as a trend for the species. Yeah, so in conclusion, I made some pretty cool insights into their microhabitat selection. If they really aren't as aquatic as they're thought to be, that's pretty cool because most of the animals in this family are primarily aquatic. I'll be contributing to the potential range size in the literature. There's not a lot of information on that. Like I said, I was able to establish some kind of connection between precipitation and movement for at least one individual. And it's possible that the lack of a lot of movement in these individuals was a result of unusual heat for this time of year. The wet season was a little late in starting and it was a lot hotter than usual. And a lot of animals were just didn't move from day to day. It's possible that they were engaging in estivation behavior. Yeah, discussion and significance. Freshwater turtles in general are pretty imperiled across the board. They're not looking to do so hot in coming climate scenarios. They're generally considered sort of a canary in the coal mine. They're indicator species, and effects of climate change on them could be telling of future changes for other species and ecosystems. And the literature is thin. This project, aside from anything else, contributes to the literature in a new way, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it highlights the need for a lot more work to be done on this species, and I hope it's done. Their natural history remains pretty unknown. There's no documentation of reproductive behavior. Their diet hasn't been studied. There's a whole bunch of stuff to learn about them. Yeah, whoops. And then acknowledgements. I worked with the North American Freshwater Turtle Research Group, and the Turtle Survival Alliance supported me with a bunch of supplies. And the Belize Foundation for Research and Environmental Education housed me and fed me and gave me a lot of personnel support. And there's a ton of people to thank, and couldn't have done it without them. So yeah, I'll take some questions, I suppose.